Okay, I'm going to assume that we're live now. So I'm going to say hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Ledwan. I'm the Canadian representative for Mandy.com. Today, I'm very excited to have this Facebook Live session with Dr. Tamara and Mig Burgess. We're going to be talking about some mental health challenges that have happened over this pandemic and some tips and some ways to help us cope with that. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Tamara to introduce herself, and the floor is yours.
Hi there, my name is Tamara and I'm a GP specializing in lifestyle medicine and mental health. I also work at the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine, also known as BAPAM, which is a charity specializing in helping those in the performing arts industry. So we have like a wide range of clinicians who have a specialized niche area helping performers. And one of my biggest passions has always been theater and musical theater. So as an amateur performer myself, I can really sympathize with some of the challenges, related to performing and working within the industry.
Great, thanks. Mig?
Hi, I'm Mig Burgess. I wear a few hats actually. So I'm actually the program leader of a theatre production course at the Guildford School of Acting, but I'm also a trustee council member of the Association of British Theatre Technicians. There is nothing that qualifies me in the area of mental health other than I have lived with it my entire life. So I am very much patient of it, but I've done lots of practice research, practice-based research using technical theatre techniques and storytelling to tell people about my condition and raise more awareness. And I also helped conduct the first UK technical backstage study into the prevalence of mental health in our industry in the UK.
Very nice. All right, so Dr. Tamara, I'm going to start with you. So recent experience with people in the performing arts industry. How has everybody kind of been affected by the pandemic recently?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's definitely been a rise in anxiety and a sense of loneliness. I think people are just not coping like they were before because there's been lack of routine. People are unable to work or earn an income. Not to mention productions are just not happening. And I think that this pandemic's induced a lot of fear, worry, and concern in the population. I mean, I think those who are vulnerable, especially, or with underlying health conditions are particularly, fearful. But in sort of the main psychological impact here in the UK, we've seen something like 2/3 of adults reported feeling worried about the effect COVID-19 is having on their life. And especially I think when the new measures were introduced, so when we had the quarantine and the lockdown in different countries, its effects just changed many people's usual activities, their routines and their livelihoods. I think that's why we've had a rise in loneliness and depression. And for me, the biggest concern is these changes in mental health, I think may lead especially to bigger things like detachment or even harmful behavior. I would say though, on the flip side, that during such a pandemic, I think a little bit of anxiety is not such a bad thing because it causes people to be self-aware and follow their guidance on things like social distancing. But I do think for the majority of people, especially those who already had mental health issues, I've been told their mental health has worsened, and people who didn't have anxiety have now developed anxiety and they're not coping, they're feeling miserable, lack of sense of self. And a lot of my patients come to me with actual physical symptoms. So headaches, migraines, palpitations, indigestion, skin problems, which is actually a normal physical manifestation of stress. And I would really emphasize that if you have a new symptom that's persisting or worsening, then really do seek advice, from your medical practitioner. Mig, how about you? I mean, have you found you've had any experiences during this pandemic or any impact on your mental health?
Done the faux pas, the Zoom faux pas. Look,
I like that.
Yeah, no. So I've always managed my condition really well. So I have a bipolar 2 or some sort of borderline personality disorder, across maybe somewhere between the two of those, and I've always coped very well with it. So not always perfectly, but I've had my strategies and my own coping mechanisms, and I found that with especially the lockdown, the lockdown section where everything changed. there was just too many things that changed all at once for me, and it just my delicate ecosystem of a head couldn't cope with it. So my child was no longer at nursery. I was told I had to work from home. I only live on a tiny little boat, so my husband is a technical manager of a theatre, so he was furloughed, so he was at home also. And yeah, you could only go out. Do you remember when you could only go out once a day or something? And it all just felt really confined for me, and it went on for a very long period of time. You couldn't see anyone, could you? So I couldn't go and see my mum or get any support from my family to help with my daughter. And yeah, so my condition just got worse and worse and worse. I'm quite lucky though, because I'm very self-aware. That's probably because of my age. I've sort of grown with it and learnt with it a little bit. So I'm quite self-aware. I became very aware that I wasn't doing very well. I had some very unhelpful symptoms that were coming back that I'd long since tackled. And yeah, so I just had a little bit of a moment with myself, and you just have to admit it when you're not doing very well. And I made the phone call to my GP and began the process of reintegrating myself into the system that already knows me. So if you have a mental health condition that perhaps isn't diagnosed, obviously you've got to go through a process. The system knows me already. I'm already on it. So it was I had to just go back into the system. And yeah, so some people say, unfortunately, I'm back on medication, but I'm not ashamed to say, I need a little assistance at the moment. So I'm having some medication where I wasn't medicated before. And I also see a community mental health nurse on a Friday. His name's Tristan. Hi, Tristan. And yeah, and that's the support that I need at the moment to help me get by, because things are a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for sharing. Because I think for a lot of people, this idea that they're really suffering alone, and to hear other people's stories, I think really helps. It's completely invaluable. No one's alone going through this, and the fact that you sought help and you persisted is really key. I think one thing that's really noticeable, and based on what you're saying about your mum and everything, is the lack of human contact and that impact it's had on, we're a tactile species. We're used to shaking hands and hugging and being close. I mean, especially in the performing arts world. So I feel like this lack has had a really big contribution to the loneliness issue, a sense of feeling alone.
It's made me more, it definitely made me more introverted, and I needed someone to remind me to talk. So I had got better at talking, and then this period has we're almost told not to, weren't we, really, and the Zoom platform is not for everybody. Like sometimes the only way you could interact, we did the family Zoom quiz or something on a Sunday, and some people get on with it. It's not really it's not really for me. I feel like I'm staring at myself, and I get very self-conscious about it. So I'm very happy now that I'm allowed to come back into my office, and I'm having slow face-to-face interactions with people again.
That's good. I mean, I'd actually argue that stress and the buildup of stress of anything like a Zoom call and not knowing how to work certain things and all that, cortisol is one of our biggest stress hormones. And actually studies show that hugging and just being tactile can lower these stress hormones and release what we call the happy hormones, like serotonin. And we've had 6 months of a lack of really touching and hugging. So no wonder everybody's feeling slightly on edge.
Absolutely. And I mean, performers, especially, pretty tactile creatures, right?
Sure.
Definitely lots of hugging in our industry.
We're very a social industry as well, aren't we? So
absolutely.
From a trade point of view, we have there's been lots of trade shows that haven't happened this year, and I think it's very noticeable that I haven't had the chance to go and see all of the people that I would normally see. Around about this time, we would have Plaza in the UK, and I think it's really noted that those things aren't happening, and I hope very much that they come back when they're allowed. And we don't just put everything online, because you're right, Dr. Samara, I hope that's not the way of the future.
Yeah, so it's been interesting, just to interject a little bit. There is a lot of online networking events, and there's a lot of online trade shows, expos. But to your point, it doesn't have the same feel, right? And it's funny, as performers, we talk about feel all the time, but this is a real thing. I can connect with you right now on Zoom, but we're still across the world from each other, and there's a different level of expression and a different level of reading people, right? I can read you way better in person, and you're talking with your hands, you're more open, you're closed, all these different things. So yeah, I've missed that personally in my own life, right? Just having meetings with employers via Zoom is so different. I can't quite read them as effectively as I could in person.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's interesting. It's definitely affected everybody. So let me ask, what are some of your tips for mental health?
Okay, I mean, this could be answered in many ways, as you can imagine. I'd start by what I say to all my patients, which is sort of do like a daily self check-in, sort of ask yourself, how am I today? What am I feeling? What are my current emotions? I think that's really valuable, because then once you know where you are that day, you can plan around that. And based on just the two important points you both reflected on, which is your social circle, your community, even if it is remote, I think we should still see people via Zoom, via FaceTime, whatever, talk to them. If you can meet up face to face, maintaining, your local government guidelines, do that. Touch base. I think people always appreciate that. And I always say to people, consider having what I call a buddy system. So especially if you're going through something, it's good to say to a couple of friends or relatives that you trust, give them a heads up and say, look, when I'm really going through something difficult, would it be okay if I reach out to you? And I would find it really hard to imagine that anyone would say no to that, because people feel good helping out. And then you can call them and you just say, look, I'm having one of those moments, I'm feeling anxious, and just give them a heads up to say, I just need you to listen and be there. You don't need their guidance, you just need them to be an ear. And I think, on the flip side, it's good for you to be that person for someone. So offer yourself to someone who's experiencing the same thing. I mean, I guess on that note, that's for me like the important thing about community. But I always go about my head to toe approach to mental health. So thinking about the head, I think about mindfulness and the mind, doing some kind of exercise that grounds you. I'm really passionate about mindfulness, and I don't always practice what I preach, but if you guys like, I could do like a quick mindfulness exercise later on. But it's the sort of thing that if you can just take 5 minutes of your day to breathe, and I know a lot of performers are familiar with it, but some find themselves to maybe be a bit too agitated. So you could go on a mindful walk, you could do mindful cooking, you could do mindful dancing. It's something to be present in the moment that actually really shows that it lowers your stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And I use it as a sort of fun magic trick with my patients who have high blood pressure. So when they come in, I check their blood pressure, it's really high. And then I do a little mindfulness exercise and it comes down by like 30, 40 points, and they're always amazed. So it really does work. It's not just for a sort of, fancy show there, but it really does have a good impact. And I think on that respect, moving down the body and thinking about your stomach. So the foods that we eat, we see studies now that pro-inflammatory foods can cause mental health issues. So avoid processed and sugary foods and fried foods, and really stick to kind of fresh foods and a nice variety and lots of fruit and veg. And I couldn't emphasize enough on good sleep, exercise. So thinking about ways of letting off steam, but also doing calming and gentle exercises, especially towards the evening. And I think for me, the thing I learned about the pandemic was avoid reading and watching the news too much. I feel like getting updates, stick to the facts if you need to for your work, but otherwise just switch off, listen to a podcast or read a book, or start a new hobby, that might help your vocation. So those are my top tips.
Yeah. Mig, I know you were doing some different things in that kind of space. Are you willing to share some of the things that you were doing to help you?
I kind of feel like there's nothing I haven't tried during this period, because I can't even begin to tell you how bad it got. It did get really, really bad. So I tried some yoga. So you were talking about mindfulness. I feel it's just some people just struggle with it, and I really struggle with it. But you must persevere with it, because the idea behind it is just about switching your head off. But for me, I just like you were saying about the mindful walk or whatever. my Tristan, who I see every week, realised very quickly that I wasn't doing very well with the traditional methods of mindfulness. So he was just suggesting things like, when you go for a walk, try and pick out all the things that are blue, because that way you're not thinking or procrastinating or ruminating on whatever's in your head. You're concentrating on all the things that are blue. All I would say is don't pick green, because they're obviously green. I live by the river, so everything's green. So just try and pick a colour where you've got to kind of have a little think about it.
I like that.
Yeah, the exercise thing for me, I can't do without it. So that's what have been my coping strategy. I find running just works for me. So I've slowly built that, and the endorphin thing, it works. Is an actual thing and actually works. And I attribute my lack of medication, obviously not now, but all the time that I wasn't medicated, I believe that is because the medication for me was natural endorphins from exercise. So I treated running and exercise like my medicine. So that was really, really important. I'm also trying at the moment to write daily pages. So I write, I think I set myself I'm a bit list driven. So I write 3 pages a day, or I try to write 3 pages a day. And for me, it's just about getting some of this out onto the page. And what's been quite useful for me in doing it, it started off a little bit like, I don't really know what to write. This is a bit awkward. Do you know what I mean? And actually, I've been doing it now for over a month. And in the writing process, I've actually began to start to analyze things a little bit. And I've realized I've started to be my own therapist, I get, and start to notice trends and potential things that I could do or I want to do or whatever. It's quite an interesting process.
I think that's amazing because, some psychologists talk about things like a gratitude journal or writing down your thoughts. And, in therapy, we say you've got that 1 hour with your therapist, but actually most of the work happens outside, and you can kind of thought dump, if you like, and you can start to see and analyze, as you say, when you have a thought that you're worried about something, where might you be catastrophizing your reaction to things? I think that's the big question. And by writing it, you can realize, oh, this is something that's been niggling or bothering me. If I write it down, I could see my reaction to it might be me catastrophizing.
It's cathartic, and the act of writing it gives you some kind of structure, I feel. Does that make any sense? So like when you talk, sometimes you just, I don't know, rabble on, but when you write it, you've got to go through the motion and the physical motion of writing it as well. And in doing that, you kind of organize it a little bit.
And you can write down your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts. You can actually group it into different areas. So there's actually things that you can do like CBT online. There's ways of, teaching yourself. But I would always say, especially if you've done it before, it's a great tool to use. So that's great, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. So look, we're not in the clear yet with this pandemic. There's a lot of uncertainty moving forward. We don't know where we're going. So suggestions for coping with that uncertainty. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like Mig was saying, when we're writing down our thoughts, why don't we think about how we can't really change what is happening out there? We have no control of that, but we can change our reaction to it. And that's something that CBT practices. And also I'd say as a caveat, like keeping your tasks manageable, because everything can seem a lot more overwhelming if it's all there on the plate for you to deal with. Whereas if you kind of write out your tasks for the day, for the week, and especially for performers, if you've got a lack of routine keeping you busy, create a routine. And also be creative and see, I'd say, where that leads you. Because I think if you've been unable to do the work that you were doing before, perhaps, I've had a conversation with quite a few performers during the last 6 months, and we were sort of trying to think of exploring other avenues that they could use their creative energy and use skills that perhaps they already had. Lots of people in the performing arts industry have transferable skills, and whether they're experienced, I guess, in rigging, backstage, design, audiovisual, or costume, and then to everyone in front of house and everyone on stage. I think there's temporary means for people to discover different channels, perhaps looking at the world of online culture, I know that there's a lot of things evolving in the world of online culture. And I guess that you could even go completely left field, go into building work. I know a guy who worked in production and now he's doing like Audible books. He's doing the voiceovers. So I think there's things out there for people, especially if they're really stuck. But it is perhaps even a time to learn a new skill. I know that a lot of people in the performing industry are always saying something that's needed for their CV. So now's your chance to, I guess, learn that.
Yeah. Meg, have you practiced anything new and different?
So, yeah, I've been one of the. I'm very lucky to have been incredibly busy working in education during this time. It's been tenfold more difficult, but obviously I'm surrounded by fabulous work colleagues who are all out of work. So I guess I've had something to focus on in that sense. So I haven't had the luxury of time that everybody else has had. But I've been hit by, like everybody else has. I think I try again, selfishly try to focus on me a little bit. And I think that I don't feel like you can't just focus on you for a little bit and really get to the nitty gritty of what you need to do. I very quickly worked out that I didn't need to hear Boris's daily bulletin, whatever the hell it was that he was doing or whatever. And so actually, I'm pretty clueless as to what is going on, but that sort of just works for me. There are things that I can't control and I've got other things to concern myself with. So and people generally tell me what I need to remember. So I've been told about the rule of 6, but I just didn't watch it live, So yeah, I just and social media can have good things and bad things as well, but lingering on that all day is not something to write. The other thing that I think that I guess really probably I was really unself-aware of how much it affected me was the fact that the industry is very closed, and I think I was unconsciously anxious about it and sad about it. But I can't fix that. I can't open the theatre. I've done everything I can to do that with the ABTT, and I've been active in doing all I can, but I can't be Superwoman and single-handedly fix that problem. So I must put that in perspective in my life. But I think it very easily became overwhelmed with the situation. I think you just got to come back to yourself a little bit. For me, there were so many different things that had gone wrong. Like you were talking about food as well, weren't you? And I just wasn't eating properly, and I wasn't going out for that run that I know that I really needed to do. So little by little, I think I was looking at different sections and trying to tackle it and fix that one. But I guess, and the other thing was I'm terrible for beating myself up about stuff if I don't do it well or I don't manage it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn to, like, if you just have one of those days that doesn't work out, and just sort of draw a line under it, go to bed, get up the next day and have another crack at it is sort of the way that I feel about it. I think because I don't get it right all the time. I just go, that's a blat. That was, we won't worry about that one and we'll tackle it again tomorrow, really.
Yeah, I don't think it is about getting it right anyway. I think, everything you said is super wise and insightful. And I think that a lot of people have that inner critic, as you say, or that kind of parental voice.
Yeah.
Saying you should be doing this. And I think we all walk around with that. And I think especially performers, they've grown up in that, like, awareness of being completely self-aware, but also being judged all the time from the outside. And I think part of that is understanding who you are as an individual, not as a performer, not as a lighting technician. Ask yourself now, like, what are your core values and who do you identify with? Because you become that person on stage or you become that makeup artist, but you're not that person all the time. That's not who you are. And I think that at the moment it's so challenging to really identify with your vocation. So try and identify with who you are and what your core values are might help, because we cannot be critical of ourselves. This is beyond our control. But yeah, especially if you haven't got what we call the 9-to-5 job, it's so much harder to motivate yourself. And it's so much easier to just be critical and to just let it spiral. which is super hard. I mean, Daryl, I don't know if you have any coping strategies for yourself when you feel the brain ruminating and.
So yeah, that's an interesting question. I didn't know it was going to turn on me suddenly. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I'm an actor, so I'm a performer, right? What I've chosen to do with my time, obviously I work for Mandy now, so that's a full-time job, but I still inherently need to be creative as often as possible. So now that I'm not in front of the camera, I have to find other ways to be creative. And so I started before the pandemic hit, I bought a piano and I was like, I'm going to learn how to play the piano. And great, it's an added skill that I can add to my resume. And I practiced and I downloaded an app and I was playing and I was getting what I think is good, probably not to the like real world of good, but I was like, I could play with two hands. That to me is a success. And then I got kind of, I don't know, actors are just kind of like here, then there, then there, then way over there. And so I decided I'm going to try the saxophone. And so I bought a saxophone and I'm like, I'm going to learn how to play the saxophone too. And then I'm going to have my own band. I can't play them both at the same time, by the way. And so I started practicing that and playing with that. And then, through the pandemic, my work started to get a little bit busier and busier. And as my workflow started getting busier and busier, my creative stuff got less and less. But I do still make a point of every day at least spending 5 minutes on the piano just to run some fingers across the keys and make sure like, yeah, I played today. And it's kind of a guilt thing for me, to be honest. I feel guilty that I haven't continued with this goal that I had set for myself. But it's, we're back to that point where life is getting back to the way it kind of was, not in, the social side of things, but in like work mode. Things are picking up again and I'm getting back into those work style routines again. And, getting into those, the restaurants are open again. So I don't have to cook a nice, good, healthy meal at home anymore. I can go to this restaurant and get some like deep fried everything. So yeah, I mean, it's, everything that you're talking about today is interesting because we do talk about, this isn't stuff that is just during the pandemic. This is stuff that we should be practicing all the time, no matter what the situation is. I think it's healthy for everybody. And I think if I was to caution, and I'm not a doctor, but maybe you can chime in on this, I would caution people to, as things open up, be mindful that, if you're eating healthier now, don't just like stop eating healthy. Don't be like me and go get all the fried everything. Keep trying to focus on maintaining a healthy diet and maintaining that exercise regimen that you've created for yourself during this time. And I think really importantly is to keep up communications with people that you have had new relationships or refound relationships with during this time.
For sure. And like
I'll let you,
I think it's great. And I think, sorry, Meg.
I was just saying, we talked about big things, like profound things that you can go and do during this time. But I feel it's really important to stress that you can celebrate the little things. Like at the height of my crisis, that's when you get into like a really terrible state. Sometimes the win of the day would just be to get up and have a shower. So it doesn't have to be that you've got to learn the saxophone or whatever. Although if you've got the brain space and the capacity to do that, I do think though that sometimes it is just as simple as I'm just trying to think of some of it. Like some days I just getting up. A shower sounds weird, but like getting up and having a shower is a big thing. Getting up and having a shower and not going back to bed, now that's another win as well. And then maybe just trying to go for a walk or whatever. But like you can celebrate smaller wins if your brain isn't quite in that space as well. But Dr. Tamara, you were talking about like lists and stuff. Like sometimes I just put like 4 things on that list, and one might just be to do some washing, which is just a simple case of putting washing it. But it's like a thing that I've done, and I'm well chuffed that I've done it, and I feel like a useful part of society, I guess, if you're in that.
These things could be easy, but for a lot of people they're not. And especially I think if you're really suffering, one of the things that can be affected is your memory and cognition. And I think it's really important to emphasize, if you do know that someone that is going through a hard time, it's literally about just checking in on them, but also seeing if can you come by and help them with, like, do they need some food, do they need help with the washing or something like that? Because these are the things that we think, oh, this is just the day to day, but actually they become extremely difficult. And I know we all entered this like Corona uniform and we were all just wearing, you know, joggers, sweatpants, and that was our kind of staple for the day. But for people really suffering, it's, as you say, something like having a shower is a big deal. So commending yourself for that, and maybe even saying, okay, I'm going to try 2 days in a row now, and really encouraging yourself that this is just one step at a time and little by little, and not putting the pressure, being compassionate to yourself and really being kind to yourself.
Can I ask you a question? Is talking like a little bit like a muscle memory type thing? Because sometimes I feel during this lockdown, I was okay at it, and I got terrible at it. During this period, I had to relearn. So like, I have a best friend. Why didn't I phone her? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? So is it? I feel like it's something you have to. I don't know if that's silly. Something that you have to keep up as a practice. I don't know.
Yeah, well, actually, one of the things we think about is the jaw. We use the jaw for a lot of things, for talking, for eating, and it's a muscle. And funny enough, if you stop anything, so you know they say it takes 3 weeks to learn a new habit, but it's the same way of unraveling things. So if you've not done something for a while, and I think especially for performers, I give credit to all my friends out there and all the performers who I know have worked so hard to maintain like an online presence. So they're teaching online, and I can't imagine how difficult that is, because you are talking to no one. You have no feedback, and they're used to having the feedback, or maybe you have feedback but bad connection if you are doing it over Zoom. But I just think credit to those people who maintained their art and did it online, because that was at least keeping up some kind of muscle memory. But that's not easy. And I know that it's the sort of thing that you do have to maintain with anything. I think also just, we all became, I think they said, oh, for introverts, this is the best thing because they're really easy with it. And extroverts, this is like the hardest thing. But actually you could tap into discovering your more introverted side a bit and connecting with that, and vice versa. So I think that's what brings me back to kind of mindfulness, and this idea that being mindful of everything that you do, taking step by step, grounding yourself, can really take a deep breath, and just, if you mumble words or suddenly stumble over something and you're giving a presentation, it's okay. You can mess up and you can just say, I'm just having a blank moment, rather than trying to cover it up. And we're human, we all do that. So I think more than anything, people in this industry understand that.
I wanted to kind of chat a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of, to Mig's point, this can be a very debilitating thing. And one of the things that I think is important to talk about is the stigma that surrounds a lot of mental health issues. How does one overcome that? Because I think, you if you're dealing with something, there's a lot of fear to present that to anybody. And it's like, admitting you have a problem, but it's not like it's not a problem. But how do you kind of overcome that feeling, I guess, and actually seek help?
That's a great question. I think, Mig, why don't you take this one to start with, because you've experienced it, and then I can follow.
Yeah, I think with anything, isn't it, that I like to think that humanity is generally kind. Do you know what I mean? But you're always going to encounter that one person that's unkind, and but you can't go out there tarring everybody with that brush, because I do think that the majority of people are understanding, and I think that most of the stigma is a lack of understanding of the condition. It's just as simple as that. Like, the mind, mental health is a difficult thing. If you're one of those fabulous people that I would love to be, that has that kind of brain that doesn't have the things that go on in my mind, I can imagine it is really difficult to understand what happens. It took a long time. I'm 40 in November, and I only really I call it coming out, it's like coming out and letting people know what's wrong with me. But now I'm really open about it. I'm still on my journey, learning how that happens. I'm of a generation where it wasn't discussed. So I'm lucky that I now teach, and every year I get a fresh cohort of 17, 18 year olds, that come in, and I'm so lucky to see that they live in a different world than I did. It just wasn't discussed. You didn't discuss it at all. So, but they're growing up in a different world, and I'm still learning how to do it. So, one thing that I'm contemplating at the moment is sending. It sounds mad. Sending an email to my work colleagues, just writing some things down that. Like some parameters of things that would help me with my condition, things that like, you know, like not interrupting me when I'm doing something. I'm not very good if I'm doing something and someone comes in and it disrupts my brain flow. I'm not very good with that. My memory, Dr. Tamara, is not great, and my attention span is difficult because of my thought processes. I'm all over the place. So incredibly long meetings I'm not great with. So things like that. But I'm contemplating being that honest with my work colleagues and just treating it like any other condition. Like if you have autism, then we make some adjustments to deal with people with autism. So I guess what I'm thinking about doing is writing down what potentially some of my adjustments are, and that's something that I'm working with my community mental health nurse with, to try and identify what some of those parameters are that would make me feel a bit better. But again, it's just about being honest. I had quite a lovely journey actually, where most people, like if I had to give you a percentage, it would be really high, like 95, 96, 97%. But I think in life, you're just going to encounter that person every now and again, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think it's really great that you've just highlighted the ability for you to manage practically with your condition in your workplace, with your friends and your colleagues. Because as you say, for what is unknown, people might be fearful of. And I think now we're in an age where people really start to talk about it. We have wonderful, mental health organizations like Mind here in the UK, champions of mental health. And then we have people who talk about it openly. And I think showing your vulnerabilities is a strength. And I'm always really honored and touched when patients tell me about what they've been experiencing. And then I always surprise them by telling them a bit about my own mental health experiences, because then I say to them, look, I'm human. I've had my own, and this is how I've gone through it and what I did. Because then they realize I'm coming from a place of real understanding, and I'm not just there being like those nodding dogs at the end of a car sort of thing. And I think that the idea that the more we talk about it, the more we show that we understand our own mental health and have an insight towards it, and the more we can be vulnerable about it, but then show that we're actually, as you say, managing it practically, seeking help, talking to people, really adapting our lifestyle and routines to help manage it better, means that there really shouldn't be a stigma. And also it is one of those wounds that you never see, and you can't just sort of put a plaster over it. It's not a broken leg, but everybody has.
I'm learning that I'm trying to learn. I feel like it's a weakness. I know that that's how it kind of feels sometimes. But actually, I'm trying to challenge that unhealthy thought process, and just admit that sometimes I have to tap out. I'm just trying to equate it to this week. I just had a bad day, and with bipolar disorder, you're sort of all over the shop. But I came in and I had a Zoom training session, I think, and it was an hour and a half, which is quite long for me. And for some reason, I'd only allowed myself 15 minutes before I had then another long meeting. And actually, for the first time ever, I think, I just politely sent the people to that meeting that I'm not feeling great today. And could we please rearrange this one? But in my mind, I'm challenging, just feeling a bit like defeated by it. But actually, they were all right. They were just like, all right, Meg, yeah, no problem. So actually, that was an unfounded thought. What I mean? I'm not suggesting that I do it all of the time, but sometimes you do have to just tap out, I call it. Just
Yeah, and I'd say actually, I mean, if you want, I can teach you a good mindfulness trick for that, because I would argue that thoughts are really not real, but feelings are. So anything that we think in the moment, I promise you, it's just us thinking about it ourselves. Not no one else is really thinking that about ourselves. But being open that you're feeling in that moment off kilter, off balance, is a really good thing. You're showing that you're not quite ready to be in the room and engaged, and you just need to take a moment.
I
And
did try mindfulness actually, because we had a chat
yeah,
last week, didn't we?
yeah,
And I thought in preparation for this, I should embrace it. So actually, after when I tapped out from that meeting, there's an app called Headspace. I don't know if you have that in other countries, but there's a Headspace app, and so I think it was about a 10-minute, just one of the 10-minute ones that I did.
yeah.
It was quite hard to stay focused, but they're quite forgiving. The guy that talks you through it is quite forgiving actually, and he just says, if your mind has wandered, just
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you do you guys want to try a little bit, or?
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
I've never led a mindfulness where if people are watching, I can't see them. So this will be interesting. But, you know, with my patients and with groups and stuff, I have. So why don't we try like a simple exercise? And for everyone watching at home, I want you to just find a comfortable place. You know, you can sit or lie down. Plant your feet on the ground so that your soles are connected, and you know, really connect to the floor. And I want you to just gently just close your eyes. Okay, so just tap out and close your eyes. So I'm going to take you on a mindful journey. As we begin this practice, let's just take a moment to welcome and congratulate ourselves in being here, and that we're actually taking this time to be present, to go into our own lives. So without moving or correcting your position or posture, let's just take a few moments to do what I like to call a mindful check-in. How are you feeling in yourself at this moment? Register any sensations, any tightness in the body, as well as connecting to your mood, your feelings, your emotions, and just acknowledge whatever's being felt and letting be. Now, very gently, withdrawing the awareness from the mindful check-in, let's bring our attention to the breath. Being mindful of the breath in the abdomen, expanding on inhalation and falling on exhalation. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing normally and breathing naturally. Feeling the rise and the fall of the abdomen. This type of mindful breathing can help calm us down when we're feeling anxious, feeling fearful. So just be mindful of the breath, coming in and going out. Breathing in and out with awareness. If you find in the silences that your mind has wandered off, gently and compassionately, just make note of this. Treat the thoughts like fish in a stream and let them pass by, bringing it back to the breath and the abdomen. Breathing in and breathing out, slowing our lives down moment to moment. Listen into yourself with such compassion. There's no need to push ourselves more than we can handle. Just working with the edges, feeling into the anxiety and acknowledging. As we learn to be with things as they are, we may even discover the underlying causes of our fears and pain. Now, gently, we'll shift our focus to a body scan and just acknowledge whatever is felt in the body without correcting anything. So bring your awareness to the soles of each of your feet, getting to feel the heels and the bottom of the feet, the toes, the top of the feet, behind the Achilles tendon, gently into the ankle joints, letting the awareness rise up into each of the lower legs, to the calves, the shins, and coming up into the knee joints. Now let that awareness rise from the lower legs into the upper legs, into the thighs, hamstrings, feeling into the upper legs and feeling its connection into the hip joints. Letting the awareness come up into the hips and then the center of the body. And feel it rise into the tailbone and gently coming up into the lower back, up the spine, vertebra by vertebra, into the middle of the back, and eventually to the upper back. Feeling sensations in the back with awareness and just breathe into it. As we go through this body scan, we may notice from time to time tension, tightness, achiness. And if we can allow any of these areas to soften, let that happen. It's also important to know that if we're unable to soften, our practice informs us it is okay to just let be. Try not to adjust yourselves. But if you feel an area of discomfort, just try breathing into it. Let whatever sensations ripple and resonate wherever they need to go. The same applies even to our thoughts and emotions, letting them be. Now I want you to connect to your shoulders and the shoulder blades. Then gently bring the awareness down into each of the upper arms, the elbow, the forearm, the hands, feeling sensation from the shoulders to the fingertips. Now feel the rise of the chest and into the rib cage. Feeling into the chest with awareness and being mindful of whatever comes up in the body. Let any waves of thoughts, emotions, and sensations ripple and resonate wherever they need to go. Now let the awareness rise from the shoulders into the neck and throat, and then come up into the jaw. That real exercise joint in the body. Feel into the jaw, and then spread into the cheeks, the temples, the head. Feeling into the eyes and the muscles around the eyes. Feel the face and the head with awareness. Now I want you to gently connect the face, the head, to the neck and throat, and with the shoulders and arms, and the hands, the chest, the belly, the back, the hips, the legs, and the feet. Feeling the whole body from head to toe. As we breathe in, feel the body rising ever so gently on the inhalation and falling on the exhalation. And now bring your awareness back to the breath, in and out. Just staying present to each breath in and out. And gently be mindful of breathing in and breathing out. As we begin to end this meditation, let's take a moment to remember all those that are being challenged with feelings of anxiety, all those living with fear or worry. Let us extend our well wishes of healing, of peace to all those living in fear. Let us know that by expanding our energies and well wishes to them, they are not alone, and neither are we. May we take this moment now to congratulate ourselves for our practice today, for proactively turning any fears into something we can work with, and for always bringing it back to the breath. I want you to very slowly open your eyes and just stare straight ahead of you with a soft gaze. Let your body connect back to your surroundings. Slowly come back into the room and allow yourself to come to a close of this mindful journey.
You have to learn that voice. It's a very good voice for mindfulness.
I have a new career then.
I think for some people, I mean, I can just see I've got the chat, and some people are saying that they loved it. But I think I'll just be honest that there was a point where I was struggling. So but what's great is I know I'm getting better at it, which is good. So I think it's one of those things you have to practice in order to do it. But it's really important to switch your head off. I'm just trying to think of the things that I've done to help me build up to it. Like sometimes, because I'm in my office now and I've got like 2 screens and whatever else, and you never switch your head off, do you?
Yeah.
Sometimes what I've done in the past is just listen to a song, but put it on my headphones, but made sure that I wasn't near any stimulus, like any kind of like telly or computer or whatever else. So maybe I'd just go outside and see if I could do how long's a song? 3.5 minutes or something. But yeah.
You can actually do mindful listening to songs. It's like behavioral activation, we call it. And you put on a song that you know invokes emotion. It doesn't matter what emotions. I mean, usually we just say a song that you connect with that means something to you. As you say, put off all other distractions and really listen to the song and just try and listen to the emotions that it brings up. And I know you were saying about switching off. We can never switch our brain off. It doesn't ever switch off. That's not the goal. And that's why I say, think of it like fish in a stream, cars and traffic. I mean, I was always fidgety as a kid. And for me, mindfulness and meditation was super hard when I started off. And that's why I got into other practices initially, like mindful walking, where you said, looking at the color blue, you could study the sounds, the smells, the sights. You can use all your senses in mindfulness. It doesn't have to be sitting still. But I think that for a lot of people, whether it's listening to a song, whether it's movement, whatever it is, do it in the moment, be present and connect only to that. And set yourself even a timer so that you know you can do it for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes. And if you start to do it every day, especially like at a certain time of the day, so if you're the sort of person who struggles to sleep, do it towards the end of the day. Or if you struggle to kind of get going in the morning, it's a really great start to the day. It's free, you can take it anywhere. And it's just something that, I mean, for me, when I'm really tense, if I do it, I immediately feel that, I never feel worse, put it this way. I always feel that sense of more calm and focus. And, the studies have shown that people who do mindfulness and then they couple it with therapy, not only have their, the gray matter in the brain grown, but the connections, this improved connections. So your efficacy in thinking and focus and concentration, you just become a more efficient person. And we all know that
I think, I think I'm going to give myself a pat on the back, because I think that was a bit longer than the point where my mind wandered, I think, was a bit longer than it was the last time, which is good.
Well, great.
But again, it's about not beating yourself up, I guess, and totally just being like, you've got to learn to embrace it, really. Yeah,
absolutely. And just start with 2 minutes,
Don't start with like a 15.
Start with 10 breaths, that's all it takes. So I'm glad you stuck with it.
So before we wrap up, because it's almost time, I wanted to ask I think a pretty important question. And I think it's really difficult to answer this one, especially when it comes to performers. But what are some signs that we should be looking for and recognizing with people who may be suffering? And performers are very good at hiding that. Is there a way that we can kind of see beyond that to see if they need help, and offer just an ear, right, for those people? Is there anything that you can suggest in that?
Yeah, so the signs and recognition is really important, because especially if you're in it, and Meg will probably know this, like when you're experiencing it, you're less likely to recognize it. You're more likely to be in denial. You really won't know. So certain things like changes to your persona, if you're the sort of person who used to be really chatty and you suddenly become really quiet, you care less about how you look, you start to kind of your speech becomes slower. So if you notice someone has just become really softer in their speech, they speak less, they're less interested in conversation, they might falter a bit in memory, they might be disinterested in eating, or you might switch and eat too much. We talk about these compensation techniques, and if we're feeling a lot of heavy emotions, we try and detach from the thing that we're most afraid of by compensating. And often we compensate with alcohol, food, drugs, TV, you name it. And I think if you're starting to have thoughts that you want to harm yourself, and it's very normal as humans to have thoughts of thinking even to that extent. But definitely if you're starting to have thoughts like that of harming yourself, hurting yourself, even ending your life, if you're already at that point, you really must go and speak to a professional, or if you're too scared to speak to a friend. And like I said, the strength is by being vulnerable. You are never alone. No one is alone. We all feel these things at some point. We're all feeling this at the moment, this uncertainty. So don't just sit on it. So don't wait till it gets really bad. If you start to feel the niggles, if you start to feel sad, if you start to feel anxious, panicky, tight chest, like I said earlier, those physical symptoms and you're not sure where they come from, these are all reasons to speak up to either a buddy, or of course go see a professional like your family practitioner, GP, etc.
Right. So thank you very much. That's really insightful, and I think it's very important for people to know and not fear the stigma, especially.
Right.
It affects 100% of the people.
Yes.
Right. That is like a stat that you can't argue with. I don't think so. I want to just mention to everybody out there, Mandy.com has put together some resources pages for all of our people that are on the platform. You can go to our resources page and look up. Every country's got different references that you can look at. A lot of them do pertain to mental health. I would encourage everybody to absolutely seek help from friends or professionals as you're going through whatever challenges that you're going through. I really appreciate your time, Dr. Tamara. Mig, thank you so much for sharing your story with us as well. Before we sign off, if there's anything else you guys want to talk about, please, by all means.
I would just say that for anyone in the UK, obviously BAPAM, we're open, we're doing remote consultations, and we're also getting back to the office. So it's free, it's charity. Performers, can come and see us for any concern. It doesn't have to be mental health related, but anyone within the industry. So I think you put the link up on your website as well.
Yeah, definitely there. Meg?
And for me, it's just take it from one that has had to do it. Just it's not. Don't be ashamed to ask when you need help. And actually, it is out there. Like I know that we're dealing with a pandemic, but actually our NHS is there to, and any resources in whatever country that you're in is there to support you also. Yeah. So in the UK, we've got the theatre helpline. So I'm not ashamed to say I've phoned a crisis line during this time. And there's some really lovely people on the end of a phone that really care about you. So just don't be ashamed to ask for help.
Never. Yeah. Great.
That's great advice. Like, yes. Thank you so much, you guys, for your time today. I really appreciate it. I think this is really invaluable. And I hope that everybody feels comfortable, and certainly with the exercise, the mindfulness exercise will be helpful as well. I hope that people really have some positive, solid takeaways from today's session. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Meg. Again, thank you, Dr. Tamara. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll see everybody on the next Facebook Live. This will be recorded and posted up on our website as well for viewing later on. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.